So how come we're not serious enough? What prevents us from being with our hair on fire, as the Buddha was saying? He was saying that one might stand by and watch idly while one's head is burning, but it is far more urgent to practice Dhamma, far more urgent to remove bad qualities and develop good qualities, more urgent to get rid of wrong views and develop right views, far more urgent to get out of ignorance. It's more urgent than if our head was on fire. Then, if our head is on fire, we know what we have to do. We're not going to stand around and watch and say, I'll do it later, or, oh, maybe it's not so bad. No, of course we don't say any of this to ourselves. We just know what we have to do. We have to put out that fire on our head. And he said it's more urgent to practice Dhamma, more urgent to develop in Dhamma. How come we don't see it like this? What prevents us? We have to look inside ourselves and see if we have any understanding, if we have any kind of faith in the Buddha's teaching. We should realize that if he says this, he doesn't say so out of wanting to make fun of us, out of wanting to make a joke, he doesn't say it for the fun of it. He says it's because it's true. So what is our misunderstanding, our stupidity, that we don't see it like this? Do we forget to practice? Do we forget to be mindful? Do we forget to pay attention? Or do we feel like we're just going through the motions of practicing meditation half an hour every day, or even asking ourselves questions, trying to understand, studying the Dhamma, but without really knowing why we're doing it, without having the drive to do so, going through the motions because that's what we think we're supposed to do, because, oh yeah, I'm practicing Dhamma and they tell me to do this and I'm looking into that, but without having from ourselves, from within, the drive, the need to understand, the need to change, seeing it as something urgent and necessary, as urgent as having fire on our head. Ajahn often talks about the analogy that it's like going to the doctor. If you don't know that you are sick, if you don't feel sick, then you will not go to see the doctor. There's no reason for you to go see the doctor. This is the problem when we don't see the very first of the noble truths in our lives. We don't see suffering. We don't see that we have a problem, or that life is a problem, or that our existence is a problem. We're happy going on with things, busy in our lives. No base to give our practice meaning. No base to meaningfully strive in Dhamma. Because as we see, as we feel it, everything is fine. The teaching of Dhamma as it comes to us is like a kind of painful treatment or painful diet that is offered to somebody who is not diabetic. Okay, it's maybe good for the diabetic person, but me, I don't need that. Or a wheelchair offered to somebody who has legs and can walk. It might be good for somebody who doesn't have legs, but for me, I don't need that. But what you don't understand, what we don't understand, is that we will need a wheelchair soon. Wheelchair, in this case, it stands for Dhamma practice. It stands for the path to go out of suffering. Because even though we don't see it, even though we don't realize it as it is, when we're young, healthy, and everything is more or less going well, we're happy in our lives, we think there's no suffering in the life, but that's not the case. Even if we're healthy now, soon we will need medicine. Whether in 2 years, or 60 years, or 80 years, still it counts as soon in terms of samsara, in terms of aeons and aeons of existence. And this actually is really not something we have to just take on faith alone, but it requires a certain amount of wisdom to see it. It's not only because of suffering either, because of having physical or mental suffering in our lives, that we will have the wisdom to understand what's important and what's not important. There are thousands and millions of people who are suffering incredibly deeply, incredible hardships every day on this earth, but they don't get any wisdom from it. It's not because of suffering that we are wise. And even if our life is pretty good, that doesn't mean we have no anxiety, no fear, no stress, no pain, no worry. It's impossible, because these things are built into the nature, the structure of our whole lives, of our existence. If it were not the case, if it were possible to have a true security in this world, then the whole Dhamma would not exist. Just look outside. The leaves of the trees are changing. At the moment there's no leaves. In spring they will grow. And we don't we're not stupid enough to think that those new green leaves will stay there on the tree forever. Their nature is to fall and die. Every year. Everything that grows falls back into the ground every single year. This instability, this change, and this fact of everything being out of our control is all around us in everything that we see and everything that we do. Even if we are rich, healthy, young, beautiful, and all those things that everybody wants to be, we still can't escape the nature of things. Even the most powerful being on earth has to fall at some point. And you know what they say? The higher the climb, the harder the fall. The more we build up, the more we lose. And it's something that we already know, whoever we are and whatever our situation. Because if there were no chance of losing whatever we have, if we knew that we were not going to lose it and we were totally secure, then we would already be totally free of all stress, all anxiety, all pain, all worry, and we're not. But our wisdom or lack of wisdom just depends on how hard we try to ignore this fact. Some people will act according to it. This is wise. And others will desperately try to stick to everything that they have and just ignore, put their head in the sand and ignore the fact that things are changing around them, that their own bodies are changing. Like we try to do plastic surgery and we try to modify everything to make it appear as though things are staying the same, as though we can keep what we like and keep things how we want them to be. There's another example that Ajahn likes to give about a record player, one of those old style record players that you have the needle that moves from ring to ring, from groove to groove, I should say. But some people want to stay always in the first ring, making the same sound over and over again. Like I enjoyed to party and have fun and get drunk when I was 15 years old, and at 50 years old I still want to keep on doing exactly the same thing. Or let's say from the age of 4 until the age of 24 I was at school, and now I just want to keep on doing more or less the same thing, being in school all my life, studying all my life. Basically, we have one comfort zone that we find at some points, and we want to keep on sticking to this all the life, running around the same groove, playing the same sound the whole life long. And the reason this is really so unwise is because as we try so hard to stay in the same place, actually we are running at full speed headlong every moment towards death, towards decay, towards change. So this is one of the basic meanings of ignorance, literally ignoring, not looking at the truth that is right before our eyes, and doing everything we can to hide it from ourselves. There's also a little children's story that Ajahn made reference to about the grasshopper and the ants. It involves a happy-go-lucky grasshopper that spends his whole summer playing violin and dancing and singing. And as he is doing so, he watches as an army of ants are busy, busy, busy all summer long. They never stop working, and he's looking at them and asking, why do they make life so hard for themselves? Why do they pass all their time working like this? Don't they see it's sunny outside? Don't they want to enjoy while the sun is shining? Don't they want to take a break and laugh and sing and enjoy? And the ants turn back to him and say, hey, grasshopper, don't you know that winter is coming? And then, of course, when winter comes, the grasshopper has nothing to eat, and he has nowhere to go, and he has no home, and nothing prepared, because he spent the whole summer just playing violin. So this grasshopper is similar to the majority of people, actually, or anybody who does not see the seriousness, see the urgency in practicing. He thinks, everything is fine now, why don't we take it easy, I have plenty of time. But while he sings and dances and plays his violin, winter is still coming, and when winter does arrive later, then the deep regret arrives. It also reminded me, just to give a final example, about a little video that I had seen at some point about a 97-year-old philosopher. The video was made by his son, and this video follows this old philosopher throughout one day, and it's a man who has had an incredibly good life. Like, he had stayed with the same wife they were in love for the whole life, and she had died just 5 years or 6 years or something previous to the making of this video. And even at 97 years old, this philosopher was staying in his own home. He was pretty healthy. He had no major health conditions. His mind was sharp and clear. He had somebody to help him put on his clothes and to cook and everything, but he was pretty independent, able to paint, able to go about his daily life. So really his life had been the best of the best that one could hope for as a human life. And yet, despite all of this, as you watch this video, you can't help but want to cry for this man. He talks about how when he was in his 70s, now 20 years ago, he had written a book about death and saying that there is nothing to be afraid of in death. And he was saying that now he was not sure if this was a very good statement or not, because whether or not there is a rational reason to be afraid of death, he was still afraid of death. Even if he could not do most of the things that he could do, even if he had already lost most of the most important people to him in his life, still he wanted to live. And he couldn't understand. He was trying to understand, what was the point of my life? What was the point of it all? And what does it mean that now I'm just going to lose everything like that? After all of these years, still he is saying this himself in his own words in the video. Still, I don't know myself, he says. Still, I don't understand my life. I don't understand myself. And now I'm just waiting to go, waiting to die. You see him go out on his balcony and watch the trees and see how beautiful they are and see how he regrets not having appreciated them properly before. So it's such a sad, pitiful, sorrowful thing to see. Such a nonsense to spend your whole life working to have a career, a good job, a family, only to sort of gradually have it all drain away. What does it mean? What's the use? Even in such a scenario that he has a good health, good situation, incredible good fortune. But still he has to ask himself, what was the point of it all? I don't see. So what I want to bring here is, instead of waiting to ask ourselves this at the end, when everything is already gone, we should do so now when we are young and healthy. Are we serious enough? Do we see it as if we have our head on fire? If we don't, it's not because it's not that urgent. It's because of our own ignorance that we don't see it. So this is what we have to dig into. And here, when I say we need to see it like our head is on fire, this should not be mistakenly understood as just like forcing you into a kind of rushed, urgent, taking action without knowing why or what you are doing. It doesn't necessarily refer to taking any specific physical action, and that's also one of the reasons that it's more difficult to live with one's hair on fire in Dhamma compared to putting out an actual fire on one's head, because there, basically, it's very easy to know exactly what we have to do. But what it refers to is the attitude that one has, how one prioritizes. When your hair is on fire, there's absolutely nothing else that comes first, or that can take precedence over this urgent task to put out the fire. And you don't need to know like the physics of fire, or even to know all about how the fire got to be there in the first place in order to work to put it out and to see the priority of putting it out. And it's the same in Dhamma. You don't need to have like a PhD in Buddhism to get your priorities in order. It's as simple as seeing, as we mentioned earlier, my situation, whether I like it or not, whether I ignore it or not, it's still that I'm subject to old age, sickness and death. Or it might be from just seeing, look, I'm not free from ill will. I'm not free from selfishness. I'm not free from laziness. Seeing inside, look, I have pride. I have the possibility of agitation, anxiety. I'm still not free from doubt and confusion, not free from ignorance and unawareness, not free from suffering. It's because of seeing these things in oneself that we have the urgency of acting to remove them, acting to get rid of them, acting to become free of them. And they're things that we can only see by looking into ourselves, nowhere else. If we see these things in the correct light, then seeing this inside ourselves, we have to get rid of them. It's like having fire on our head. Nothing else can take priority over that. Nothing is more important. And so if we don't know how to go about removing them, we have to search to find out. And if we know already what we have to do, if we're clear about that, then every moment should be used for this purpose.